You could have heard this episode 48 hours early on our Patreon, patreon.com/indieheadspodcast. By joining us for as low as $1 a month, you'll receive episodes early and gain access to our Discord server. All of our upcoming episodes will be up on our Patreon 48 hours before it hits our public podcast feeds. But if you're hearing this via our Patreon feed, we thank you so much for your support. We especially want to thank our Real Ones patrons, including Becca Etienne, Georgia Mikowski, Tyler, Marcy Anime, Chance Holdup, Delaney Miller, Rihanna Cruz, Josiah Duncan, Janelle LaFleur, Matt Cameron, Grant in the Back of My Dragula, Pablo Escobar's Hippos, Jackson Christ, Alec Felder, Sandy Nemo, Jeremy Bull, Drew Wharton, I Like Books, Jonathan David, Max Kapazinski, Mark Berry, Aaron Hillsamer, Darian Fisher, Cal 50, Noah's Refused Pimped Out Dave Matthews Event, Chris Wade, Jacqueline Kataga, Midwest Maxwell, Kevin John, Jake Wald, Erase Red Baby, Rob Marino, Max, Dylan, Waffle113, Gavin 490 Freak, and Maze Farms. To become a real one, consider supporting us for $5 a month on Patreon, where we'll receive a bonus episode every month and get a shout out at the top of the pod. Anyways, though, enjoy the episode. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode, or at least the second episode of FYC, for your consideration, the new series from the Indie Heads podcast, where we're talking about some new records, some stuff that we want to recommend to y'all and discuss a little more in depth. As if you heard episode number 1 on Alex G, we're starting the series because we kind of stopped talking about new music regularly a little bit ago. You know, about two years ago now, I would say, is when we had the Lark number ones. We kind of stopped talking about new music on a regular basis once we kind of got that series rolling. But we still have a desire, and the catch-ups are good, but I feel like it's not enough. There's definitely some records that we really want to go more in depth on, and that is what the series is for. And I am joined by Jackie once again, and we have a special guest here with us, the CEO of Nu Metal. It's Holiday Kirk. Welcome to the pod. Finally, this has been a long time coming.
Pleasure to be here.
And we are here to talk about Cheem's Guilty Pleasure. Cheem is. I'm going to ask you all the same question of how you discovered this record. Cheem is a band from Connecticut, and I discovered them this year through our pal Luke Phillips. He just randomly played. He randomly played the new record that we're talking about in the office one day, the Planetary Group office, and I was like, "What is this? Like, this is great!" And then listened on my own, and then kind of went back to it like a month or so later. I was like, wow, this is just like a really great record. And yeah, that's just it's
I think that's how, but wasn't it that you listened to it because of Luke, and then I listened to it because of you, and then I think Kirk listened to it because of me. I think was that the chain of command? I think
I feel like it had to be.
It's not.
No,
it's not.
No,
how'd you discover Cheem?
I heard it when I think Sam DM'd it to me on my Twitter account, and it's actually funny to consider. But he DM'd it to me. He's like, "Hey, if you could check our band out, it would mean a lot. We make some like pop punk type music," which it means a really weird sell for me. But I was like, I'll give him a chance.
Yeah,
and I put it on, and it was so undeniably good that I think like halfway through or toward the end of it, I had to just stop and tweet about it because I was like, so it's one of those albums where you're like, everyone, I don't know. I mean, I can't speak to you two, but for me, it was like, everyone I know is going to love this immediately. Like, everyone's going to love it.
I had that reaction to a certain degree, even though I think that, as we'll sort of get into, I similarly, with the way it was described to me, I was like, well, that sounds interesting, but I didn't necessarily think I was going to love this because I do not have a pop punk past. I think we've talked about this kind of offhandedly on the podcast, but Fallout Boy, Panic at the Disco, these names mean nothing to me emotionally in any way, shape, or form. And even though I don't actively like hate them, you know what I mean? But it was just always something that was like on the periphery of my music world that was never my world. And so even now, as I've like gotten more into vaguely pop punk genres and also just have more pop punk fans in my life, you know, like I will try stuff out every once in a while, and I think I have gotten to the point where I appreciate the genre, but only when the genre is like really good. Like if it's not like Blink 182 level and it's trying to do just sort of a very straightforward pop punk thing, I'm usually not interested. And I'm particularly not super interested or invested in the sort of mall emo era of pop punk, the pop punk going mega corporate era. This particular fueled by ramen sound of vocal delivery specifically is really where that comparison is drawn. But then here's the thing: is I put this album on, and immediately I'm like, well, if you had described this to me, I probably would say I don't think I would like that. But immediately I was like, oh, these don't annoy me. Like these vocals don't annoy me at all. Even though I don't have the kind of nostalgia attached to it, I was immediately just like connecting with it from the first couple of songs. And then once I hit track 3, Clueless, and I heard what was unmistakably them biting the riff to 311's Down, I was like, this band is so cool. I love them. I have decided to support them. And from there, the rest of the record is just like, it's so compact and it's so all killer, no filler that like, it really does feel like they understand that people are going to come in with the biases that they're going to come into with a record like this. And they're like, we need to make this record as undeniable and as direct of a shot as possible, basically. And I think that's what makes this really stand out compared to similar stuff that is kind of trying to revive quote unquote less good genres, you know what I mean? Like reclaiming it. Most of the time when that happens, it's either done in a winking way or a humorous way, and it's like not only are they sincere in the influences that they're embracing, like they love 311, they love Limp Bizkit, they love the stuff that they're pulling from, but also it's not done in a kind of we're just doing this for shits and giggles sort of approach. They really fucking clearly were like, we want every single song on this record to be perfect. We want these songs, it's really well produced for like a band that is doing this DIY. Like it sounds nuts how good this record is.
Yeah. Like I went back and I listened to some of the tracks from the last record and I was like, they're good songs, but it's like, this just it just seems like the production on this record especially just gives these songs such a boost in energy where it's like, okay, like all the pieces were there on the previous stuff, but like this just seems like it's both a case of a band like really like locking into place like their specific sound, but also just like having, a really good, having just great production and, engineering to really, hone that in. Like, hey, we have a vision and we're going to execute it to our best abilities. And like, this is an excellent record. But, and of course, Jackie, you don't have, nostalgia for like Fueled by Ramen and like that shit. This is what I grew up on. Like, I grew up on My Kim and Panic at the Disco and Fall Out Boy and shit. Like, so. Yeah. But like I talk about this in my little Bandcamp picks thing for Merry Go Round, but like it's very interesting seeing the way the way things have been reappraised from that time. There's definitely some stuff that has gotten, very much like critics are like, yes, this is great. Like My Chemical Romance, like that's a band that got fully critically reappraised, and we're like, I mean critics liked My Kim at the time, but I think like it was like, oh wow, this band was like really fucking good and like really influential in a good way, amongst the scene. Like, hey, this band like really stood out. And then stuff like Fall Out Boy, where I think there's some critical, reappraisal there. There's definitely people out there that are like, yeah, no, those early Fall Out Boy records are really good and like really do hold up and really are like worth listening to.
But there's a cutoff point with
I think with Fall Out Boy in particular and like Panic at the Disco and a lot of those other bands is they're hitting the ceiling where their music isn't actually that great. Like it's better than it was made out to be, but there is like a ceiling. Like we can't be like, this is the Sergeant fucking Peppers of Mall Emo. No, it's like good. It's good.
Yeah, like I said, like I will not even. And I was getting ready to get my third point is that Panic at the Disco has not really seen a total critical reappraisal. I think in some circles, but I mean, I think it's a case
one either until I'm in the.
And they will probably not get one. They
will never get one.
I don't disagree. And I've accepted that. I have fully accepted that, like that's just not going to happen. And I think
that's more Brendan Urie's fault than anyone else's.
Exactly.
It honestly is like that. like what I'm saying about the cutoff point is it's like if Fall Out Boy and or Panic at the Disco had broken up like 10 years ago, I think it would be way easier to have a sort of retrospective, like maybe this was better than we think because we now have to hear high hopes in grocery stores, you know what I mean? And no one's ever going to say, hey, maybe Brendan Urie made some points now.
Like My Chemical Romance went away, and that had a huge effect on their legacy, whereas Fall Out Boy and Panic Disco never shut up.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Absolutely. And
it also helps that My Chem is just better also. But
I do think before we get too deep into this, I do think that we're overstating the pop punk emo influence on Cheem, because it would be like a little bit of a disservice to say that they're very much an emo band. They're actually very specific in the album to say we do not like being compared to indie music.
The line people keep comparing us to American football. I think that's very clear. And as you talked about with them in your interview with them, it's not just like, oh, we're pulling influence from new metal. Like, this is not the Rina Sawayama album, which is not the recent one. I mean the first one, which was a good album, but that's like using new metal as an inspiration for sort of textures and aesthetics. This is Limp Bizkit 311 worship. This is like fully like, no. I mean, and the rapper guy in the band literally said, he's like, I was a kid and I heard Fred Durst rapping over a Limp Bizkit song, and he's like, this is what I want to do with my life, rap and rock
Mike Shinoda
together.
It was actually Mike Shinoda.
Was it Mike I mean, I was gonna say that Pay to Play especially and Mango, those two verses have big Mike Shinoda vibes. You can totally see the influence on him.
I think what makes this album get over, it's some of the stuff about it that wouldn't click with someone like you who doesn't have strong ties to emo pop punk mall, or me in the same way, is that one, I think it's technically really well done. They're very tight musicians. Sam Nazarian, the lead vocalist in particular, is a classically trained singer, and he sounds like it. His vocals are tight. You know what I mean? They're tight. He's got some
that is definitely one of the first things that stood apart to me on the record, was like, wow, like he's a good vocalist. He's got like a lot of like he can fucking sing and has like a very like strong sense of control over his voice.
And that's one of the things about Fall Out Boy and Panic at the Disco that made them such a bad influence on music, is that like, regardless how you feel about those records, they are both good enough singers that they can kind of pull off that thing they're doing. And then the problem becomes when other people think, oh, I can sing like that too. And it's like, you immediately see how much vocal control it requires to make that not the most fucking annoying thing in the whole world. And I think that's exactly what you feel on this record, is that when he's going for those kind of big, sort of not whiny, but you know what I mean, like that kind of affectation to it, he never feels like he's out of control or that he's just letting his voice fly all over the place. Like, it's very tight, it's very, like you're saying, it's very on key.
I also think that for the most part, the instrumentation itself also draws a lot from J-pop, hyperpop, and much cleaner indie sort of influences. Like, it's like if we sat here and we were like, oh, it sounds like new metal, it sounds like pop punk, you'd still put it on and be like, wait a minute, this isn't. These instruments are very clean. Like, a lot of it doesn't go for just like naked chord thrashing and major key riffage. There's a lot of really intricate lines and work done in there that sounds more like 311 or Animals as Leaders or Asian Kung Fu Generation stuff, and that really hits at a different level.
And then they bring in like the electronic beats, like on Overload with the drum and bass breaks and stuff like that. And exactly, like being able to understand. And I think that's one of the things that I really appreciated about this record when I was revisiting it today. Although we should note for listeners at home, both Matty and I are really hungover today. And even though I was enjoying my re-listen of the Cheem album, I realized that Cheem is not a hungover music selection, is what I learned. Like, no offense to them. It's just not the vibe I was in today. But even so, I was having a great time with it because it's just a good record.
And I would personally like to say I am totally not hungover. I stood alone on Saturday, so big shout out to the Saturday night standers out there. You know, solidarity with you all, because I'm fucking fine. But another thing that is curious to me about this record, and maybe the most fascinating thing, is the distance between the sound of the music and the lyrics. I mean, not the lyrics, the sound of the music, which is very bright and optimistic and bouncy, and the lyrics themselves, which can often be very bitter. They're often very bitter that they have been rejected by their musical community, bitter that people turn them down and dislike them because of their influences. And that shouldn't work. I fucking hate it. Usually I really don't like it when bands write lyrics that are bitter like that, but the music is so optimistic and uplifting. Two work in tandem, because it's, to me, it's like you've got lyrics that are saying, hey, you don't have to be this way, and music saying, look how good it feels when you're not that way.
No, that's exactly what it is.
And that's how it carries itself over. And I don't think I've ever heard a band hit that mark like that. It's really
I think I said this, I might have said it on one of the quarterly wrap-up pods we did, when I think we were talking about the Pup album from earlier this year, which is a great comparison point, which is a record I don't hate. I like that record a fair amount. I don't like it nearly as much as the last Pup record, but like that whole record is like a concept album that is similarly about like, God, the music industry fucking sucks, and all these people suck, and like the corporatization of it, blah 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 blah. And one, there's just a very different tone when you're a band that's like several albums into your career complaining like that, versus a band that is striving to be noticed. But I also think the more important thing is exactly what you're saying, is that they are bitter, and that's a good way to describe it, especially notably on like Cheem season and stuff like that. But the attitude is not, people don't take us seriously, and that's fucking bullshit. It's like, people don't take us seriously, and it's their fucking loss, because they are missing out on this sick, amazing party that we're having. And it's like, it's not trying to reclaim these things in a post-ironic way. It's just like, no, these are good, and the fact that you're dismissing it, you're only losing for yourself. Like not only are you, it's not about the fact that you're not giving us our props, it's just like, we are fucking sick at what we do, and you're missing out on a fun, incredible time because you want to say you're above it.
Wouldn't you be happier like in the pool with us, all swimming in this pool?
Exactly.
Standing out there. Also, I want to recant the lyrics. I want to recant. The lyrics are not bitter. Bitterness is a very like deep-seated sort of rot. The lyrics are like angsty. They're angsty. It's much more of a like come and go type thing.
Snotty. I described it as like a it's snotty. You know,
bratty
it's
might
like,
be another way you could say it.
Bratty, snotty. Like, it's just got that. It's very much, which is just like very much in line with their influences, where it's like that, like, you know, we talked about the like beyond just the lyrical influences, I would say, are very much in the, you know, the Fall Out Boy kind of more Fall Out Boy than Panic. I think vocally Panic definitely, but like lyrically definitely very much in like the Pete Wentz school of lyrics, but like definitely, but it's very bratty, but not in the way, whereas like Fall Out Boy, like sometimes like their lyrics were like, it was just misogynistic, let's just say it. Like, it was just like, there are some Fall Out Boy songs like, wow, these are like really misogynistic.
There's
Jesus
none
Christ.
of that here.
None of that here. This
Zero.
is not it's like they're
it's
sort
positive,
of,
but it's not
the
positive,
hater.
you know
They're calling
I mean?
out the haters. They're not calling. They're calling out the haters, and it's not. It's just like, but they're calling the haters not like, oh, you rejected me. It's like you're rejecting our band and our music. It's not. It's got nothing to do with like, it's like, oh, this girl rejected me. None of that. Like, which is like what makes this record like stand out so much, is that like, you know, I hey, look, I like some early Fall Out Boy. I still like some of that stuff, you know. But it's nice to be. It's okay. Like, this is just like a generalized. Hey, we are like, this is our band. These are our influences. This is what we like. You don't like it, that sucks for you. You know, like, just like, it makes me really think like, this is a record that I think if it came out, God, even as soon as like early 2020, like even like in the early COVID days, I don't think I would have connected with this record that much. I think I probably would not have, like, I think like the nostalgia was only so much there, but I think definitely for just, this is just me speaking personally, in a, you know, a post butt rock number ones, you know, world 100%. That I live in, it's just like, I'm much more open to these things than I would have been. Like, I would have been like 311, like some of the influence, I'd be like, I don't know about this one, guys. But now that like I have forgiven my childhood self for my music taste, and I think that's why I like this record so much.
The nostalgia was there, but the appetite for the next thing was not. And what this record has, though, is that, and one of the other things that makes it so clever is that even though it pulls very liberally from a lot of acts that we are nostalgic for, the album itself, I cannot stress this enough, is not nostalgic at all.
I agree.
It is definitely firmly focused on, hey, what can we do next? Like, what is the band that listens to this gonna make after us? There's no like, man, remember 2006? It's not it's not like Machine Gun Kelly or something where it's like, I've hired Travis Barker to drum. It's literally just like, man, what could happen next?
It's what I was gonna say about it that like makes it stand out from even like other artists now, like black dresses, that are like taking crunkcore and stuff like that and trying to use it. There is not an irony to that, but there is a sort of aspect to like Devi's philosophy of quote, sucking is experimental. Like that's different than this, which is, to me, honestly, the thing that it kind of reminds me of, and this is obviously a very lofty thing, it's similar to what like Hudson Mohawk and Sophie did with like happy hardcore. It's like, here is a genre that is like so over the top that it is just inherently regarded as cheesy, and we're not going to just throw back to that genre and say, hey, remember this way. It's like, we appreciate what makes this genre distinctive, and we appreciate what makes it so impactful, even if you want to discard that as cheesy, and is basically like, how do we capture that and like present it in a way that is going to take those aspects of it but still feel like completely new and fresh and like the future. And I think that this is totally doing that, where it's like, what did we love about those 311 records? What did we love about Limp Bizkit? And then how do we apply that to music right now? And it does feel very, very in conversation with like a lot of the fifth wave emo stuff that's happening right now. Like,
yeah. Fifth Wave, and Kirk briefly mentioned it, but like, you can't deny the hyperpop influence on this release. Like, that's really the big thing that I think that is like, that's very much where it is looking towards. It's like, it has all these like nostalgic influences, but it's never laying in them too much. It's like, okay, taking that and be like, hey, how do we apply this, like what's going on right now and what's going to happen in the future with music? And like, it creates for a lot of very like exciting divergence. Like I think you mentioned in Overload, where it's like, it has just the random drum and bass,
super hyper pop.
Yeah, like just the random like drum and bass section. It's like, this is a band that very much, it's one of the things where the ever developing Matty mindset, the Matty core tenets of these bands that are, you know, sort of more, at least when they started out, very more traditionally kind of, you know, emo indie rock bands, sort of embracing electronic influences, but not, you know, in very unique ways, where it's like, hey, I'm applying sort of my previous knowledge to this genre, but doing it in a way where it's like, we're still very much respecting. Like, it's not like, hey, like, if we're gonna like mine from these genres, we want to make sure we know what the fuck we're doing. And this record, the Strange Ranger record, the Pendant record, are like all like records where it's like, hey, like, you guys say, we know our fucking shit. Like, we know our fucking shit, and we're applying it in a very like, in a I feel like tasteful is the wrong word per se. It's just in a way where it's like, okay, this feels natural. This feels like this works really well. And it's like, all like, that's the thing with the Cheem record that's just so impressive, that like, it's very like all the things they're pulling from, and all the things that they're kind of like pushing towards. It's incredible. This record is as cohesive as it is. It's
100%.
For how much it's trying to do in such a short amount of time.
It never feels like it's stretching under the weight of like all the stuff it's trying to fit in there. You never feel, to use a classic blank checkism, there's nothing sweaty about this record. You know what I mean? Like, and never do you see the effort of them straining to try to figure out how to fit this stuff all together. You can clearly tell that they put so much work into refining all the details that it just sort of feels like a one cohesive thing, even though you can clearly point to just like individual moments and be like, okay, here's where they're pulling from Limp Bizkit, and here's where they're pulling from 311, and here's where they're pulling from this, and like, but it all feels like one very distinct new thing. I also want to go. Okay, go ahead.
What I've said before that is impressive too about this one is it's 22 minutes long, but it has 44 minutes worth of ideas in it. So you get to the end of it. You get to the end of it, and you're like, all right, I got to run that one back. Like, I'm not tired of any of that.
Yeah.
I'm not tired of any of those songs.
I the first time I listened in the office, immediately on the way home threw it on, and then once I got to Clueless, I got caught and in the, okay, I need to repeat this one song and listen to Clueless like 3 times in a row. That song is just so fucking fun.
That was me with Cheem Season.
Cheem Season really, I was just gonna bring up Cheem Season.
I'm gonna play Cheem Season really quick.
Cheem Season is the real thesis statement of the record in terms of how it. Also, I love this little dance music break at the beginning of this. So great. But I think that this song, more than any other song on the record, feels like the distillation of exactly what we're getting at about it being not bitter, but the whole idea of the album and the concept of the guilty pleasure cover, like the title, it being not that, oh, this is music is guilty pleasure music because it's bad, but you like it anyways. It's basically them, and usually when artists complain about critics, especially current artists that are like dunking on all critics and the idea of people that don't make art criticizing art, like all of that kind of anti-critic sentiment. Obviously, I'm not a fan of that, and I think what makes this so great is that it's not about critics suck because they don't like us. It's like, why would you let someone else's review of an album tell you how to feel about it? If you like it, what the fuck is the point of changing your? Why, I can't believe they let it, like you let them get to you is the line in it, and like I think that is the distillation of it. It's just like you should never let someone else's opinion of the music you like affect. It's like a very simple concept, but I do think it is executed so well that like it very easily could come across as, not to just throw this under the bus, but like Ska2 Network does a similar thing where they kind of complain all the time about not being taken seriously as a ska artist or whatever. And I think this...
How do you not get taken seriously as a ska artist? How is that possible?
We can move past that, whatever.
Okay.
But,
okay, clearly we have to move past that.
We do, but I just think that this line right here, I literally remember someone in the Endless Scroll Discord was... I recommended it to Matt, who was a big 311 fan, and he lost his shit, and some other people checked it out, and someone was like, this has a lot of really cool ideas, but I'm not sure I can get all the way on board with it. And then 5 minutes later, they messaged and said, all right, I don't want to be bitter because I can't compete. I actually do like this, which is just the funniest thing.
It is an infuriating album because there's too many good ideas on it, especially with this song where he packs, Sam comes up with two different vocal melodies that could power their own songs.
Totally.
And you're like, oh, damn, man. So he's too good. He's too good of a singer. He's too good. He needs to be stopped. Stop this. He's taken all the melodies.
And I think that the rap verse in here also is sort of the crux of this project, is that you're either gonna be on board with him rapping about Kenny G or you're not. And I think that it is obviously the most like goofy moment on the record, but it doesn't, it just, I don't know, for me it feels so obviously like self-aware and entertaining in a way that I think you could have a very bad faith reading of it. Like when he says step to a couple of fresh MCs,
it's irresistible. You have to get on board.
I completely agree, but I've seen people be like, that's where they lose me. Like I can't deal with the corny rap rock stuff, which obviously we here are less annoyed by that prospect, but I do think that it does. I agree completely that it's irresistible. Like they're having so much fun.
There's the part in the same song where they go, ooh, ooh. Like, come on, how are you not gonna have fun with that? Come on,
right.
Yeah,
let your guard down, man. It's not all the national.
I think there is still like it's definitely people just have like an internalized hatred for nu metal because they were told growing up, oh, this is uncool. You should not like this, and like you gotta let that part of you go. You gotta let it go. You gotta just take that part of your brain, just take that out and just embrace rap rock, embrace nu metal. Like this shit owns, it slaps. And here's the thing, I will definitely say on like a first listen, it's definitely the thing that is like maybe the toughest thing to kind of like, because there is, again, even as someone at this point in my life that very much like has embraced nu metal, that has embraced my love for nu metal and rap rock and all that shit, there's still a little internalized hatred for that. So it's definitely like at first listen, I can kind of be like, okay, like how much is this going to be on the record, guys? Like, are we how much are we doing here? But like you get over it very quickly because it's just like it's fucking fun. It's fun.
I'll say too, speaking as somebody that is starting to come around on nu metal, I'm getting there. The thing that makes
you're getting there.
I'm getting
the
there.
CEO
I'm
of nu
working
metal is
on
getting
it.
there.
I'm running this whole time. So here's the miracle of being a young band and embracing influences that are considered low class like this. If you're a young band, you come out and you're like, we make chiming indie pop that are very influenced by the Smiths with shoegaze elements of reminiscent of My Bloody Valentine. You are immediately competing with every fucking band that every indie critic in America has ever heard in their entire lives. You have to compete with everyone. But if you come out and you're like, we love Limp Bizkit and we love Linkin Park, you're competing only with other bands that critics wish they could like. They want that permission to say, oh, I fucking love Linkin Park so much, but they don't have it yet. So you can only go up when you're.
I think for Linkin Park, Linkin Park, I think things have come around. I mean, unfortunately, but I think due to Chester's death, I think critics have kind of come around to Linkin Park, because it's also just like, because Linkin Park sold a bajillion fucking records. It's like, okay, there's bajillion, like there has to be something there. Although, you know, that conversation, which has not been the same for like a band like Creed that also sold a bajillion records, but Creed like fell.
Here he goes.
I'm not gonna get too much on a
Here he goes.
It's just like the commercial drop off for Creed, like it was a huge drop off, whereas Linkin Park stayed pretty consistently popular pretty much throughout their entire career. Like
they
were
still
huge.
Yeah, they're still huge.
Those late records are like they were still selling out arenas. Even the very last record they made was like still a big deal. And you're exactly right that it's a similar thing to new metal, I think, where people throw out the baby with the bathwater, because sure, there's some new metal that isn't good. I'm sorry, Kirk, I can't. It pains me to say
nobody knows this like I do.
No,
nobody knows this.
I know, but I'm just like, because of that, and because of that, it was so pervasive, and because it was the thing that replaced the beloved alt rock of the early to mid 90s that critics love, and it was that thing. I think there's just sort of a resistance to it in a similar way that, like, when Limp Bizkit is exploding, you can sort of view it as a sort of like, oh, this is just what the kids like, in the way that we would sort of look at a 21 Pilots or whatever, which is a band very, very directly influenced by Limp Bizkit. But that, like,
also the career arcs of new metal bands tend to be, when those bands finished their run, they like went 6 feet underground. Like, they bottomed out. It wasn't like Pearl Jam where they just settled into making meh albums. All the new metal bands eventually, somewhere in their career, made like the worst shit you have ever heard in your life. No,
exactly. Yeah,
I respect them for it.
They fly too close to the sun because new metal is a genre about giving 110%.
Exactly.
If you're making the worst shit or the best shit, it's about putting everything you have into said shit, and that is something that Cheem does really well, is that you can really tell that, like, even as they are, and I think it's another thing that makes all of the sort of complaining work, not complaining, but like all the stuff like on Pay to Play, which I fucking love the first little verse of Pay to Play. I found the trick behind the music scene, and it's worked out more times than I can count. I found the secret to this music thing, and it's sitting in my bank account. Like, first of all, that's just very funny, very true, but also the fact that, like, when you're complaining about the music industry being this shitty pay-to-play thing, you also need to be bringing it, like. And I think the thing I think the thing I noticed about this song in particular is just like the drums on this record are fucking awesome. The drummer of this band is so good.
That's Sean Thomas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and he's able, again, it seems like on a drop of a hat, like able to play like a lot of different styles in this record, and is able to like kind of continue like as a drummer is, but just be like a backbone where it's like, I know Sam's lead singer. Who's the rapper in the band? The rapper and guitarist?
Sky Holden.
Sky.
Yeah.
Like very much like kind of like able, like, all right, you guys are doing this. Okay, I can play with it. You know, like, yeah, the drums in the song are fucking sick, and like.
And when we talked about this, so I was also really specific about that. I'm like, yeah, the drums are incredible, and they really buck against the trend of what a lot of modern metal goes towards, which is very stock drum sounds. And Gabe Weitzman, who played guitar and produced it, and Sean Thomas was the drummer, they were really, really adamant that they wanted to make sure people knew that these were real drums played on a real drum kit. And Sean Thomas in particular was rattling off some influences to him, and he listed System of a Down, Disturbed, Deftones, but also like Front Porches, Holmes, like bands like that too. And I do hear that like in meeting in his sound, where he's switching between those different influences in a way that feels really smooth.
Yeah, without his playing, this record would not be able to make the pivots it makes from moment. No. Like, even in this one song, like all the different movements it goes through, and like how it changes as it goes into the Bobby Woody feature, which I also want to say, Bobby Woody sounds a lot like Currency, is what I think of when I hear this song.
Yeah,
he's got a similar voice.
He totally does. Okay, I should tell this story. I'm going to tell this story.
Yeah.
Yeah, it goes. So the members of Cheem, I apologize, but it's a good story. So the first thing that happens, right, I jump on Zoom to do a Cheem interview, right? And I'm on the phone with Sam and Sky. And I'm asking them to like introduce themselves. And Sam's like, oh, I'm the lead singer. I do the vocals. And I'm like, cool. And I'm like, okay. And Sky's like, oh, I do the rapping. And there's like this really weird silence. And I have this like deathly look on my face. And I'm like, what? There are racial slurs on the album? And he goes, that was a guest. That was a guest rapper. They're 100% with no irony, with no self-awareness at all, was a moment there where I was like, this was a short interview. I'll be damned. That was the whole interview. Wow. I was thinking like this. I've never seen a young band drop the ball like this. Wow. All right. Well, good talking to you guys. No, Bobby Woody, I apologize. I sincerely apologize to Bobby Woody and Sky Holden. That was dumb of me. I should have known better. But yes, that was how that interview started. So I'm glad that recovered from there.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
God, yeah. This is just a good record. It's just such a good record. I mean, and to speak more personally, I mentioned in my Bandcamp picks thing where like, I was kind of getting into it before we kind of moved on, but like, one of my first favorite albums was A Fever You Can't Sweat Out Of by Pang at the Disco, and this record very much feels like it just feels like the Chad version of that album and what it's trying to do, where it's like it is trying to kind of take like these influences from the past but like kind of see into the future a little bit, but like whereas Panic, like even as much as I love that record, it gets pretty clumsy at times, especially like in the first half where they're kind of trying to pull some of the more electronic influences, but like none of the guys in those bands, they do not know shit about electronic music. They have no idea like about any of these genres. They don't know how to play it. They don't know how to produce it. Like this is the Chad version where it's like, hey, we know these genres. We know how to play them. We know how to produce them. We know how to integrate into our sound in a non-clumsy way. It also helps that Cheem are not literal teenagers. It helps that they are full-grown adults who have been in a band for more than like a year or two. So it helps that they have experience being a band and having plenty of like musical training and not just being like, oh, I have some songs. Like no, like we've got songs, but also like we know our fucking shit.
Yeah, they clearly have played a lot like live together enough that it is a really like hi-fi record in the way that it's produced and very meticulous, but it also like all of these parts have the energy of, oh, this band would be so fucking sick to see live, and that they are able to put it all together in the live context because just like the synchronicity between what they're doing on the guitar level on it with the drums and all of that, like they're just in lockstep with each other.
Speaking of which, how much harder do we need to bully them to get an LA show?
we're gonna work on
inflation. Here's what I'll say. Like if they can afford a flight, that's great. Like as someone that is like like flying back home for the holidays, like I was hoping to fly back home in October for like just for a visit.
Oh no!
Inflation is, in terms of flight prices, inflation's fucking crazy right now. Like that's a case where it's like I don't really at this point in time with politics. Like people are like inflation. It's like I don't care. I don't follow that stuff. But looking for a flight, it's like, oh, yep, nope. I see it. Like getting to LA is like not. It's unless you got some fucking flyer miles or whatever. Like it's not. It's costly to get out
How
here.
about we're talking four figures.
Well, not four figures, no. But it's definitely like it can get up there. It's I mean it's only 3 figures, but even then it's still like. Like let's say that you want to fly from LA to somewhere else and then back. It's gonna cost you like if you're like on a month's notice, like very short notice, it's gonna be like 400, 500, 600, like even for like a 2-stop flight. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, and I was just talking to Keegan of Camp Trash about this. Like for smaller bands, especially, like LA is a hard venue to play, not only because they've got to travel all the way from the other side of the country, but like to be able to play in LA and headline their own show is like tough, which is why hopefully we can perhaps get some bands together in the future. Winky, winky, winky. But we we can't talk too much about that because that's very much in the
Cheem, if you're listening,
early stages.
Cheem, it's like we'll figure out how to get you guys a show.
When the president of Atlantic Records meets with you when you sell out the region, okay,
this is my official invitation. Cheem, I'm inviting you to sleep on Matty's couch. His apartment is available to you.
Yeah. I want to. It's big. I got a new one. It's a big couch.
I currently have an empty room in my apartment right now.
I also have a pull-out couch. We're getting the pieces together. But
there is an empty room. But
are there any more songs that we want to talk about in specific on this record?
I was gonna say I want to mention sort of the aftermath of this release. So this comes out, and it's been really exciting to see just the natural buzz, just the word of mouth really going around, and just like more and more people are like checking out this record and it's gaining traction. I think really the peak, the peak was it got a fucking Pitchfork review last month, like a couple months after it came out, which is again, it's rare Pitchfork will do that. They don't usually, like, at most it's like they'll maybe do some stuff like a month after it comes out. It's very rare that like they're willing to like go back and be like, hey, we're gonna write about this record, because
it's clearly, first of all, it got a 6.9, which is just fantastic. It's exactly the score that's high enough that obviously we would all score it higher than a 6.9, but it's exactly high enough where it's not disrespectful, and it's also because like it being a 6.9 is better than it being a 7.2 or a 7.4 or a 7.5. Like it's just, it rocks that that's the score it got, but it also.
Goodbye, Jackie.
Technical difficulties, we're back. Hello, listeners. Anyways, what I was saying as I was cut off there is that we were talking about the reception of this album and the fact that it got the Pitchfork review after the fact. So, first of all, it's insane that Pitchfork covered this band. Like, not only that they decided to cover this band later, but the idea that Pitchfork would give a review to an album that is inspired by the things this album is inspired by, but more importantly, that this record, and shout out to Nina Corrigan, that got a review that understood this album. That there was someone at Pitchfork that not only saw what this record was going for, but was able to appreciate it and celebrate it. And that's what's crazy to me, is that, like you were saying, like, if this had come 2 years earlier, there would be an audience for it and people would have responded to it, because I think it's pretty undeniable, but I don't know that it would be able to be appreciated in the way that it currently is. And I just think that that's like really cool. Like, as I said on Twitter, there are lots of timelines in which there are 99 out of the 1 million timelines or whatever the Doctor Strange quote is like, Cheem is not covered by NPR. And we live in the only reality in which Cheem has been covered by National Public Radio. And that's just, like, regardless of and I think there has been a certain, I remember when like the Limp Bizkit album was coming out and there was all the like hype for it, and I remember some people, not to just throw them under the bus, but like the End This World people and other people being like, Jesus, like, what's with all this, like, whatever, we're pretending that we liked this stuff, or like ironic embracement of, which is just a misunderstanding, I think, of what's going on. But I also do think that part of why people have that knee-jerk response to music like this is because of stuff like Machine Gun Kelly pop punk. It's because of all of the music that's being made right now that is hollow nostalgia, not for a particular style of music, but for like the abstract concept of that style of music. I saw all the pop punk that's being made right now sounds like someone is making pop punk after listening to Misery Business once and having someone describe to them secondhand what pop punk is like as a genre, as opposed to people that really feel like they have enough of a facility with the genre to be able to do new interesting things with it. And so I think that's why people have a knee-jerk negative response to the idea of, here taking thing that is beloved by some but sort of critically maligned, and we're gonna sort of revive it, and see people just think, oh, this must be a nostalgia thing, and that isn't what it is.
Did anyone see the Willow performances on Saturday Night Live?
I did not yet, no. But I really did not like that last Willow album.
She's like a lot of where I find like new mainstreamish emo and pop punk music, where it's like they're a triumph of marketing. Like the image and the visuals 100%. Carry them through all of this acclaim, and when the music itself, it's like, does anyone remember that song? Is anyone listening to that still? That album that came out 6 months ago? Like, not really.
Yeah.
I would agree.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like in some ways like this record coming out, it is like kind of perfect timing where it's like, okay, there is this sort of like revival of pop punk in the mainstream, but like so it's good to me on that front. But the problem is that a lot of this the stuff that's getting mainstream, there's some stuff again. There's some we clown on Machine Gun Kelly, and I think for the most part rightfully so. That Tickets My Downfall. It's not a bad record. It's
I
not.
agree.
It's not. There's some good stuff
I
there.
won't tell anyone I said that, but I
I
agree.
didn't listen to the second one though. I heard the second one was just like dog shit.
Awful.
Willow. There's like there's some like I think Transparent Soul. I listened to that one. That's pretty good. Although the Board Lord remix is really fucking good. The Board Lord remix is so good.
Yeah,
If you can
is
find it
sick.
online somewhere. But this is a record where I think like I think you briefly touched on this, Kirk, where you were just sort of like it just feels kind of cynical in some ways. It just feels like it's like, okay, it's just nostalgic, but it's not really trying to do anything new per se. It's just like, hey, you guys remember this genre that you used to like when you were
It stops with nostalgia, and I could not criticize it any more than they could when they hired Travis Barker to drum on it. And not even to ask him to like, hey, try something new. Literally just like they go to him and they're like, feeling this, do that 19 times, and then we can leave.
And it's not even that they're going to him because if a lot of these artists haven't made this kind of music before, and he can give them sort of this basic skeleton template structure, but it's also really just a branding exercise. Like Travis Barker stamping his name on a feature is essentially the same thing as like Donald Trump slapping his name on a thing he didn't build. Like
on a candidate.
It is just there. It is just there to give the veneer of legitimacy. It is there to say, Machine Gun Kelly knows what he's talking about. He's working with the guy from Blink 182. This is real pop punk. And then whether you agree with that or not, like the branding has already worked.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is just an excellent record, and it's just again, it's nice to see because I feel like, me and Jackie, and I think, yeah, to you to a small extent, like working in the music industry, you start to see how the product is made.
Mm-hmm.
You start to see how that's made, and this isn't to say that like, oh, like here's the thing: if you're a band and you can hire the greatest publicist in the world, you can only get so far with that. I think like you can only get so far. There's definitely bands where it's like, hey, if your music is good, you're probably gonna need some money to get it out there. But even then, like we see how the product is made, and we have seen a lot of really mediocre bands get pushed through and get a ton of coverage where it's like what are people seeing in this, like what's going on. So it's really nice to see like like this record where it's like, hey, like this is a record that like I mean they're on a label, a very small label, but still, it's just really nice to see like an independent record like really make it to like music writers and critics and fans and be well received through like pretty much word of mouth completely.
Totally.
Like it's just like people just like it's just the snowball that keeps going, and it's like it's really nice that we still have. It feels like that's becoming increasingly rare, which is crazy because it seems like the whole thing with the internet and with streaming was that, oh, this was supposed to kind of like democratize things a little more and make it like, hey, like some people can just blow up, they don't have to have a publicist or a label. Like if the music's good, hey, people can find it. But nowadays it's just like they figured out a way to kind of like take some of that power away, being like, hey, you got this publicist, you gotta,
it's
hire
not
these
even
people to put you on
that
your
though.
playlist.
It is so the marketplace is just so scattered is more what
That
it is
too.
to me. It's just the reality of like you're saying is that like things can bubble up organically and things can be pushed through artificially, but even still, whether anything will actually take and resonate with people has never been more of a crapshoot than it has ever, because there is more new good music being made than ever before, and there has never been a worse system of journalism and marketing and information in place for people to be aware. Like, it happens all the time. Ethel Cain's publicist said this on Twitter the other day. An album will come out by an artist that you like, and you didn't even realize it. And it's not the publicist's fault even necessarily. Like, obviously, if a publicist does their job really well, they can get the thing in a million different publications and they can have it be in the conversation and then you hear about it. But it's like the conversation is 1 million conversations. And besides a couple of places like Pitchfork that still have the kind of, and Anthony Fantano and a couple of other places where people will congregate to receive an opinion, like, for the most part, it's just really a crapshoot about whether stuff is going to resonate, and not everything that is good rises to the top in the way that we kind of idealistically hoped that it could. But the good thing is it still can happen. It's not impossible.
Yeah.
And even though it is so hard to predict what will, and it is so hard to put your finger on the scale if this is your job to try to promote music like it is for me, like, it is very difficult to figure out exactly how you heard these cats, because it's always a difficult
What song
job.
is on this playlist? Maddie, what song is on this playlist?
It might be off at this point. Yeah, because they switched the stuff out pretty. They like Fresh Finds. They switched it out pretty.
I was sitting. I was like, whoa. I feel like that's probably a really big look.
If I had to guess, it was probably Snag. It was probably Snag. If I had to guess,
good for them.
I think that I took a screenshot of it if I can find it, because yes, it was Mango, because Endless Heaven and Mango were on the Fresh Finds Rock playlist at the same time. The Shut Up's Cheem synergy.
We've got to spread the word on Emerge. Emerge is the sleeper hit from the album. I promise you this. Emerge is the
very
one.
good.
Let me play Emerge really
amazing.
quick.
That's the best singing on the
great
whole
outro.
album. There is a part in there where his vocal harmonies click together in a way that is so incredible. It makes me emotional. I love that song.
It is the thing that I think gets underrated about, like, 311, is that I think their reputation became the down riff and their 1 inch tall rapping man, when, like, there are a lot of there are a lot of 311 songs that have just, like, gorgeous vocal harmonies and, like, a real, like, pop-minded approach to sort of melody and songwriting. And I think that that's something that Cheem are clearly aspiring for too, in their own unique ways. Like, being able to juxtapose the really, really heavy stuff with these, like, soaring, uplifting parts, and having it all be just, like, fun and light on its feet. Yeah, this one is so good.
Yeah, like, you definitely hear, I think this song especially, you sort of hear, like, oh yeah, they used to be, like, kind of a math rock band. Like,
yeah, and
you definitely hear that in this song.
The guitar playing is just fantastic all over this record, and
but
really,
it's insane
really
that you guys can say that. It's crazy you guys can say that for a song that we just left a nu metal bridge of. That happened. There was a nu metal bridge, and then we entered the math rock 311 part, and now we're back to a nu metal bridge. Like, it's fucking crazy that all of that can fit together like that.
Yeah,
exactly.
Until you think about it, you don't even realize how much is jumping around, because they do it so effortlessly that you're just like, oh yeah, this is a normal song. And then as you really break it down piece by piece, you're like, wait a second.
I literally can't think of any other band that can do this. I can't think of any other band that can make all these sounds cooperate with each other this seamlessly. I can't.
Yeah,
it rocks.
It's really hard to say. Like, there's bands where it's like, okay, they're pulling from this, but, like, putting it all together, it's like, I can't name a band that is doing what Cheem is doing right now. Like, there's stuff I think is very similar, obviously. Like, it's, you know, it's very much in line with some of the things that I've really, like, gone to bat for in recent years. But it's like, but even then, it's like all the stuff they're pulling from, it's just, we cannot recommend this record enough, guys. We just can't. We can't recommend this enough.
Minutes, like, you have nothing to lose. You've
exactly.
nothing to lose.
That is one of the big things.
Almost twice as long as this record takes to listen to is how long we've been talking about this record.
Exactly, and that's really the thing. This is the drum that I bang on every now and then, but it's just like, if you are a new band, a relatively new band, like, it's your first, maybe second record, with some exceptions. Obviously, I think recently Ethel Cain is a pretty big exception, where it's like, I'm gonna, like, this is my vision, I'm gonna execute this. For a band like this, for something that's in the, like, kind of fifth wave emo kind of wave, or something that can be kind of lumped in that scene, Brevity is the best fucking thing you can go for. Like, this is 22 minutes. It's short as fuck. You breeze through it, because here's the thing. It's because it's so goddamn good. You're like, well, like, damn, that was so short. I'm just gonna run it back. You know, like, I think there's definitely some cases where it's like in some cases, like, going over is good. I think, like, with music, sometimes going under is better. Like there's definitely times where it's like you're better off just making a shorter record because it's just like it's easier to go back to. It's easier for people to check out and be like, well, it's only 22 minutes. I guess I'll give this a go.
But at the same time, it's also a dice roll because if you fuck something up, it stands out that much more.
That is very true.
That too.
If you fuck up 2 minutes of a 22-minute record,
it does make it like you have to focus in on your best ideas. It's like make it short, but you got to hone in on your best ideas here. And like this is just like this record is like it's kind of a fucking miracle that this record not only works but works as well as it does considering all the influences it's pulling from, how short it is, and all this shit. Like it's just this record is it's just fucking incredible. It's an incredible record.
In the only way that it's the FYK record, it speaks to how much they wrote the shit out of this album. That they very clearly didn't just like come together with all these fun ideas and throw them into a pot and just sort of say like, here, we're trying some stuff. Like they very clearly worked and worked and worked at this record, and they made it so short because they were able to say these are the only 9 songs this record needs, and every single one of these songs is distinct from the others, and it's adding something specific to the record. And like it's so just precision. It's such a precise record for how loose and fun it makes you feel while you're listening to it.
Just to take care of the ambiguity, just at this point, I would like to make clear that we do like the record.
It's good.
Yeah. And now we must all say a negative thing about it. I'll start. It's too short. Boom. Too short is taken. You all have to pick something different now.
Yeah.
No, you don't. You don't actually have to do that.
I will say so this is not a personal criticism. I think this is just like, this is a reason. I mean, I already mentioned the rap rock thing. I think that can be a real thing that pulls it away. I think this is a very gaudy record, and I love how gaudy it is, but I can see like, just like, here's the thing. The album, you know, this is like a dumb music critic thing to say, like this is like baby's first like thing you say as a critic. The album cover, it's like the album sounds like the album cover. Like it sounds exactly what this album cover looks like. And if you look at this and you're like, nope, I don't want to listen to that, I wouldn't blame you. But
you still got to give it a shot.
But even then, I still think it's worth giving a shot. I guess the thing is just like, yeah, some of the gaudiness is just like, it can be too much at times. I mean, as Jackie said, this is not a hungover record where it's like, if you're in a like in a bit of a cloud, it's like, okay, this record might not be the best thing to lift your spirits per se.
You're in the wrong state of mind. It's going to be like SpongeBob SquarePants poking you in the temple over and over for 22 minutes.
Exactly.
Totally.
You need to be ready.
Like, this is a record. The album is literally called Guilty Pleasure.
Yes.
I mean, like,
be ready for pleasure.
But I also think
they're
that
very aware.
The really great play on words in the song where they say the title is that there's no pleasure in feeling so guilty. It's not even like whatever. It's about like the idea of guilty pleasures being stupid inherently, which is obviously a take that like lots of people have. It's now a commonly held thing people say. It's like, oh, you shouldn't feel guilty about a whatever guilty pleasure. But this is not. It's not so bad it's good. Like that, I think that's where people misconfuse it. Is like there's a huge difference between being able to say like, oh, this whatever rom-com I like isn't very good, but I like listening to it, and so therefore it's fine. It's like, no, this is not just trying to say, hey, this is fun, so therefore why hate on this? It's like, this is fun, but it's also really accomplished, and we're really putting our everything into this, and you can tell.
Yeah. Again, this is an excellent record. If you have not listened to it yet, give it a go. It is one of my favorite records of the year, and I think one that this is a band to watch. This is a total band to watch. And I think one of the more exciting things about this year for music for me, I think compared to like 2020 and 2021, it really feels like we talked about this. I mentioned this on Q3 where I was like, this hasn't really been like an albums year for me so much. It's been a much bigger songs year for me, just because I've been just keeping a better track of like what songs I really like this year. But it really feels like this year, I think we're kind of coming out of I guess this phase of the pandemic, which I mean, to say like post pandemic, it's like that feels wrong, but it's like no. We're in just this phase after kind of COVID decimated the industry. It's very exciting to see, so many new bands popping up and, like just putting out really excellent stuff. And it's like, hey, I've discovered like a lot of new bands this year. A lot of my favorites. I mean, I'm gonna pull up my top albums of the year, and I think like most of the stuff that's on my top album of the year is new stuff. Is like new bands I discovered this year, or like stuff I got into this year. Like Pendant. I barely had a clue who Pendant was before the first single for Harp came out, but like that's my album of the fucking year. MJ Lennerman, like I was only kind of familiar with like Wednesday. That record kind of came out of nowhere for me. It's like, wow, this is just like an excellent record. Mo Troper, that was one where it's like I listened to Dilettante last year, but like this one, the new one this year was like, wow, this is just really excellent. It's a very exciting time for new music. It's a very exciting time for new music.
And real quickly before we wrap up, just like going back to how refined this record is, I do think that is, we've certainly got some records that have sort of come out of early pandemic recordings that are not good. Most notably,
yes.
every single pop album that came out in 2021, for example, Billie Eilish, Innocent, however. But the difference that you have seen in some of the stuff that's come out this year is that some of the people that came out with stuff this year took their time with it, but that like there were a lot of records like My Beloved Shut-Ups, for example, that were working on an album that then got halted by the pandemic, and then over the course of the pandemic they rewrote the album again, tinkered with things, that the idea that everyone was sort of placed on pause. I'm sure some people it really disrupted their creative cycles, and obviously it's been just like completely financially ruinous for everyone involved. Like the Larry Fitzmaurice piece this week in Vulture about how the live music industry is like broken fundamentally right now. Like there's a lot of shit that's fucked up. But there are a lot of bands that sort of took that time where they were forced to unplug and regroup and have come out of it with very like, we spent a lot of time thinking about exactly how we wanted to make our return when things are quote unquote back to normal. And like, obviously things are not normal, but you are seeing a lot of bands that are making these really ambitious records this year and are taking a big swing and kind of taking the advantage of like, well, fuck it, everything's broken anyways, why don't we just shoot for the moon? And this is a record that does that. This is a record that, as much as they are complaining about how pay to play and how stupid the music industry is always, but especially right now, it's also a record that is striving for that. And in the only way that it'll ever be compared to this other album, it's kind of like Foxing's Near My God that way, you know? It's an album that like acknowledges that the goal of rock stardom is a thing that might not be possible anymore, and it aspires to that goal anyways. And
exactly.
like the valor in undertaking that mission, even though you understand that like the era of bands like 311 being able to be as successful as they are is probably come and gone, but Cheem hopefully can get some fraction of that, because
I think Cheem can do it.
I do too.
I don't think Cheem will go on multi-platinum anytime soon, but I could see Cheem becoming what we would say is like big. They could be Joyce Manor big.
I think so.
I mean, here's the thing. It just seems like they've developed like, just going inside information. It's like they've developed like good relationships with like writers and like influencers and other bands and stuff where like, I mean, a similar story this year with Cheem is the Mo Tropa record from this year, where it's like just really seeing like the natural, sort of steam this record has been, building up. And it's just like seeing the amount of people like co-signing it and giving it a listen and like being like, hey, this is worth checking out. It's just, it's really exciting and nice to see, because I feel like it can get pretty easy to get really cynical about the music industry these days. And I think this record especially like fully addresses that, like how, cynical it is to work in this industry sometimes. But like at the end of the day, it's like, hey, it's all about the music. Hey, music is my life, and music is my life.
They keep telling me this about Matty. They keep telling me.
Yeah. But this is a great record, and listen to it. Give it a listen. What are you doing? Why are you listening to this podcast? Go turn this off. Go listen to Guilty Pleasure. But before you go, Kirk, Holiday Kirk, where can people find you?
They can find me at Holiday Kirk on Twitter, or at New Metal Moment on Twitter, and either way you go, support the new metal agenda, listen to new metal, support new metal bands. And we said a lot of things about pop punk and emo tonight, but I want it to be known really well that Cheem is a new metal band. Don't ever say anything otherwise. Peace. Go in peace. Near to your God you will be. New metal.
And subscribe to the newsletter. Subscribe to Kirk's newsletter.
Yeah.
Give him some money. Support him on Twitch. Our boy is a streamer. He's doing streams every goddamn day.
I'm an
and
E-man.
If you want to, but if you want to support him in person, come to the drawing room on Sundays. You'll usually find him there. Him and me doing karaoke. Buy him a drink. Give him some money.
Yes, thank you,
and
Matty.
read the newsletter that he started. He's very good, and there's an interview with Cheem that you can check out over there.
Yes.
Facts.
There we go. All right. Well, thank you everybody listening to this episode of FYC. We will see you all we'll see you all in 2 weeks, no matter how you're listening, either you're listening on our Patreon or you're listening via our feeds. I guess just a quick reminder of the release schedule of how FYC is going to be released. It's going to be a weekly paywall for this, so it's going to be up on our Patreon exclusively for 1 week for any of our Patreon supporters. Then after that goes on the main feeds. So this is going to be a bi-weekly series, no matter where you're listening to us. So yeah, that is it. We will see you all for those. We'll see you all in 2 weeks as we talk about another newish album we want to go in depth in and kind of talk about a little more. So yeah, see you all next time. Bye-bye.
Everybody else is just falling in. Sticking to myself, so I keep it dead safe, yeah. From a million scary tweets rolling on my feed. So let me, what's the world like when you're following me? Searching through my brain is a fucking catastrophe, yeah. So I'm keeping all my thoughts right beside me.
Okay, y'all, this is it.
Keep my eyes off the prize, I don't care if it's